The gates slammed shut with a sound that felt like a heartbeat stopping. Metal against metal. Final. The small black boy flinched as the echo rolled across the wide stone driveway. And in that instant, the world seemed to hold its breath with him. His dusty sneakers were planted on the edge of a place he did not belong. His toes just inches from polished marble that shined like it had never known a crack, never known a bruise. He swallowed hard, clutching a folded piece of paper in his fist so tight the corners bent and softened in his palm, as if even the paper was tired of being held like a secret that no one wanted to hear. The iron gates stood tall and cold, their sharp tips cutting into the bright sky like they were meant to keep more than just people out. On the other side, water flowed gently in a fountain that whispered instead of shouted. Guards stood straight in crisp uniforms, eyes hidden behind dark glasses, hands resting on belts that carried more authority than kindness. And right there, in the space between dust and marble, the boy stood small, like a shadow that had wandered too far from the place it was meant to stay. Then the car arrived. A sleek black machine that purred instead of roared, rolling up the driveway like it owned the ground beneath it. The door opened, and the billionaire stepped out, phone pressed to his ear, laughter spilling from his mouth like he had just been told the best joke in the world. His shoes didn't touch the ground so much as glide over it. His jacket was smooth. His watch caught the sun and threw back a flash of light that made the boy blink. The boy lifted his head. His heart hammered in his chest, so loud he was sure everyone could hear it. He took one step forward. Just one. "Sir," he said, and the word came out thin, like it had to fight its way past fear. The billionaire kept walking, his laughter fading into a low chuckle as he turned slightly, still, deep in conversation, still somewhere far away from the child standing in front of his gates. The guards shifted. One cleared his throat. The boy's hands started to shake, but he didn't drop the paper. He couldn't. It was all he had. He took another breath, this one deeper, pulling air into his lungs like he was about to dive underwater. "Sir, please, I need help." The words floated in the air, soft and fragile. For a second, it felt like they might disappear before anyone could catch them. The billionaire raised one hand without turning around, waving the guards off like flies, like noise, like something that didn't matter. He kept walking. The sound of his shoes against the marble was steady and sure. Step after step. Power, moving forward. Silence fell heavy, thick like a blanket dropped over everything. Even the fountain seemed to hush, its gentle splash suddenly loud in the quiet. The boy's shoulders sank, not all at once, but slowly, like the weight of the world was settling on him piece by piece. He looked down at his sneakers, at the dirt stuck in the cracks, at the faded laces that had been tied and untied so many times, they barely held a knot anymore. He thought about turning away, about walking back down the long road that had brought him here, not telling his mother he had tried, that he had stood at the gate and asked and waited, and still, nothing had happened. His throat burned at the thought. He pressed his lips together and looked back up at the towering house, its windows dark and shining at the same time, like eyes that saw everything but chose not to blink. In that moment, the world felt simple. In the cruelest way, there were people who walked through gates, and there were people who waited outside them. The boy stood on the wrong side, and he knew it. He felt it in the way the guards looked past him instead of at him. He felt it in the way the billionaire's back grew smaller as he walked away, carrying his laughter and his busy life and his unbroken stride. The boy closed his eyes for just a second, long enough to remember his mother's voice. Soft, tired, hopeful. She had told him this place mattered. She had told him the man who lived here was different. The kind of person who listened. The boy didn't know if that was true anymore, but he held on to the idea like he held on to the paper in his hand. He opened his eyes. The billionaire was almost at the door now. The guards were back in their places, the moment already fading, like it had never happened. The boy took a step closer to the gate. The metal was cold when his fingers brushed it, sending a chill up his arm. He didn't speak this time. He didn't ask. He just stood there, small and still, waiting. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the smell of clean water and fresh stone. Somewhere far away, a bird called out, sharp and clear. The boy's eyes stung, but he didn't let the tears fall. He lifted his chin, just a little, like he was trying to make himself taller, stronger, more visible. Inside. The billionaire paused for a fraction of a second. His phone was still at his ear, the voice on the other end still talking, still laughing, still moving the world forward. But something tugged at him, something he couldn't name. He didn't turn around, not yet, but the pause was there, a crack in the smooth flow of his day. Outside, the boy waited. His paper rustled softly in his hand as the breeze caught the edges. The sound was small, almost nothing, but in the quiet, it felt loud. He looked at the drawing hidden inside the fold, at the colors and lines that meant more to him than any gate or mansion ever could. He thought about what it showed, about what it hoped for. The guards glanced at each other. One shifted his weight from one foot to the other. The boy noticed. He noticed everything now. The way time seemed to slow, the way the air felt thick in his lungs, the way the world held him in this moment, balanced between being seen and being forgotten. The billionaire's hand lowered the phone just an inch. His laughter faded. He took a breath he didn't realize he needed. He still didn't turn. But he stopped walking. The boy felt it before he saw it. The change, the pause. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stood there, heart beating, paper in hand. Eyes fixed on the back of the man who held so much power without even trying. The gate stood between them, tall and silent, a wall, or maybe a door. The boy didn't know which yet. All he knew was that he was done asking. He was done chasing. He was here now, waiting, letting the moment stretch, letting the silence do the work. His voice could not. And in that waiting, something began to shift. Not the gate, not the guards, but the space in the air between a boy who refused to disappear and a man who, for the first time that day, had stopped moving forward. Inside the mansion, the world moved fast. Too fast. Voices bounced off tall walls like echoes in a tunnel. Assistants whispered into phones, their words sharp and clipped. Their steps quick and light across floors that shined like mirrors. Glasses clinked somewhere deeper inside, a soft sound of comfort and ease. The air smelled of coffee and clean air and money. Every second felt planned, measured, owned, and right outside, beyond the wide doors and heavy windows. The boy stood still, like time had forgotten him. The sun shifted in the sky, and its light crept across the driveway, inch by inch, touching the toes of his dusty sneakers, warming the cracked stone beneath his feet. He didn't move. He couldn't. His fingers stayed wrapped around the folded paper, knuckles pale, like if he let go, he might lose more than just a piece of crayon-colored hope. The gate loomed behind him, tall and silent, a line drawn between two lives that would never touch. So it felt? A guard finally stepped forward. His boots made a firm sound on the stone, loud in the quiet space between them. His face was hard, his jaw tight, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses. "You need to go," he said, voice flat, like he was reading from a rule that didn't care who it was spoken to. The boy looked up, blinking in the bright light, and lifted the paper just a little higher. "My mom said this was the only place that could help us," he said. His hand shook. He couldn't stop them, but his voice stayed steady, like he was holding it up with both hands. The guard scoffed, a short sound that carried more weight than it should have. He glanced back at the mansion doors, like kindness might get him in trouble. Like even standing there talking to the boy was something he wasn't supposed to do. The boy didn't lower the paper. He didn't step back. He just started to talk, not all at once. In pieces, like his story was too heavy to carry in one breath. He spoke about his home, how the roof leaked when it rained, how the walls were thin and the nights were loud with worry. He spoke about his mom, how she coughed in the dark and tried to hide it with her hand, how she smiled at him even when her eyes looked tired. He spoke about the promise he made, sitting on the edge of her bed, holding her hand and saying he would find help, even if he didn't know where help lived. The guard shifted his weight. The boy saw it, saw the small crack in the hard stance, but the guard's face stayed closed. "This isn't the place," he said. "People like you don't just walk in here." The words stung. The boy felt them hit his chest, felt them sink deep, like a stone dropped into water. He swallowed, his throat tight, but he didn't look away. He had come too far to turn back. Now, the gate behind him felt closer than it had before, like it was leaning in, listening. Inside. The billionaire moved through a room full of people who wanted things from him. Papers were handed over. Tablets were held up. Names and numbers floated in the air. His phone buzzed again, and he frowned at it, irritation flashing across his face. He walked toward a wide window, drawn by the sound of voices outside. Distant up there. He stopped. Just for a second. He leaned closer, pushing the window open a crack. The boy's voice drifted in, thin but clear, carried by the warm air. The billionaire's jaw tightened. He didn't like interruptions. He didn't like delays. He especially didn't like being pulled into problems that weren't his. He stepped outside, his shoes clicking on the stone, his presence changing the air the way a storm changes the sky. "What's going on?" he demanded. The guard straightened up fast, like he'd been caught doing something wrong. "Kid won't leave," he said, nodding toward the boy like he was pointing at a stray animal. The boy looked up. This was the first time he really saw the billionaire's face. Not from behind. Not from far away. Right there. Close. The lines near his eyes, the neat hair, the sharp suit that didn't have a wrinkle in it. He saw the way the man looked at him. Not angry, not kind, just blank. The boy didn't beg. He didn't cry. He just held out the paper. The billionaire glanced at it, barely a second. Didn't unfold it, didn't look at the colors or the lines hidden inside. He took it, turned it over once in his hand, and gave it back like it was nothing. I don't have time for this, he said. The words landed hard, heavier than the gate. Heavier than the guard's boots. Heavier than the whole mansion behind him. The boy felt them hit and spread through him, like cold water pouring down his back. He bit his lip, tasting something salty, and forced himself not to look away. The billionaire turned, already moving back toward his busy world, back toward voices that mattered, papers that mattered, deals that mattered. The boy stood there, the paper trembling in his hand. The guard cleared his throat. You heard him, he said, softer now, but still firm. You should get... The boy looked down at the drawing, at the colors smudged, at the edges from where his fingers had held it too tight. He thought about his mom, lying in bed, waiting for him to come back. He thought about the promise. He thought about the way the billionaire's voice had sounded, flat and closed, like a door slamming shut. The world felt smaller. The driveway felt longer. The road behind him felt heavy, like it would take more than his feet to walk back down it. But he didn't move. He took a breath, then another. He stayed and the guard watched him, unsure now. The boy's stillness was louder than any shout. The wind picked up, brushing against the boy's shirt, fluttering the edge of the paper. The gate cast a long shadow across the ground, and the boy stood right in the middle of it, half in the light, half in the dark. Inside. The billionaire paused again. He reached for a glass of water, then stopped, his hand hovering in the air. The room around him kept moving. People kept talking, but something tugged at him, faint and stubborn, like a sound he couldn't quite place. He shook it off and took a sip, but the water tasted different. He glanced toward the window again, just for a moment, and saw the boy still standing there, outside. The boy lifted his head. His eyes were wet, but his back was straight. He wasn't asking anymore. He wasn't chasing. He was just there, holding his ground in a place that didn't want him. The guard looked at the mansion doors, then back at the boy. He sighed, a small sound, almost lost in the air. You're stubborn, he muttered. The boy didn't answer. He didn't need to. His presence said enough. The billionaire set his glass down. He didn't know why. He didn't know what he was feeling, but the noise inside the mansion felt too loud now, too empty. He took a step toward the window. Outside, the boy stood in the shadow of the gate. The paper still in his hand, his story still unfinished. The space between them stretched, thin and tight, like a wire pulled too far. One more second. One more breath. One more moment before something had to give. And in that silence, heavy and full, the boy waited, and the billionaire stood still. And the world held them both, balanced on the edge of what might happen next. The boy unfolded the paper slowly, like he was opening something that could break if he rushed. The edge eyes were soft from being held too long. From being folded and unfolded so many times it felt like the paper itself had learned how to bend without tearing. The wind tried to take it from him, fluttering the corners, but he pressed it flat against the cold iron gate with both hands. Palms spread wide, like he was pinning his heart there for the billionaire to see. Crayon lines filled the page, bright and simple. A small house with a crooked roof. A woman lying in a bed, her hair drawn in careful loops, her eyes closed but her mouth curved into a weak smile. And standing beside her, tall and strong, was a man with broad shoulders and a face drawn in bold strokes, a smile wide and steady. The boy lifted his chin, his voice barely louder than the breeze. That's you. The words didn't shout. They didn't beg. They just landed. The billionaire stopped. Really stopped this time? His hand, halfway to his pocket, froze in the air. His eyes dropped to the paper, and for the first time since the boy had arrived, he didn't look away. He frowned, not in anger, but in confusion, like he was seeing something he didn't expect to find. That's you, the boy said again, a little stronger now. The billionaire leaned closer to the gate, the space between them shrinking. The guards went still. The mansion behind him felt far away, like the walls and voices and noise had all stepped back to make room for this one small moment. His eyes moved over the drawing, over the simple shapes, the bright colors that didn't care about money or power or status. Just people. The boy took a breath and started to explain. My mom, she worked here. A long time ago. He pointed toward the mansion with one finger, careful not to let go of the paper. She cleaned the floors, the halls, the big rooms where people had parties and laughed loud. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. She used to come home tired. Her hands would be red, her back would hurt, but she would still tell me stories. The billionaire's brow tightened. He hadn't moved away. He hadn't stepped back. She told me about the man who lived here, the boy went on. She said he helped a neighbor when their house burned down. She said he paid for a kid from the kitchen staff to go to school. She said he was the kind of man who didn't walk past people who needed him. The boy swallowed. His eyes flicked up to meet the billionaire's face. She said, "You were that man." The air shifted. It felt heavier, like the sky before a storm. The guards exchanged a look, then looked away, like they didn't want to see what was happening. The billionaire stared at the drawing, and something in his face changed. The hard lines around his mouth softened. The tight set of his jaw loosened just a little. The noise of the mansion faded. The clink of glasses, the buzz of phones, the murmur of voices. All of it slipped into the background, like it belonged to another world. There was only the gate now. The boy? The paper? The billionaire saw himself in the drawing. Not the man in the sharp suit. Not the man with the cold voice. In the busy day, he saw the version the boy's mother had described. The one who stopped, the one who listened. The one who opened doors instead of closing them. He remembered things he hadn't thought about in years. A house on the edge of town, blackened by fire, the smell of smoke still in the air. His own hands passing over a check without thinking twice. A woman in a kitchen, eyes wide with thanks when he told her her son's school was paid for. He remembered how it felt then. Light, simple. Real. The boy's paper trembled in his hands. The billionaire reached out, slowly. Not like he was taking something. More like he was being offered something he didn't deserve. His fingers touched the edge of the paper. The boy hesitated, just for a second, then let go. The billionaire held the drawing. It felt lighter than he expected, thinner, but the weight of it settled in his chest. He looked at the crayon house, the woman in the bed, the tall figure standing close, standing strong. His voice, when he spoke, was different, lower, softer. "What do you need?" The boy blinked. He hadn't expected that question. Not like this, not now. He looked down at his empty hands, then back up at the billionaire's face. The gate between them didn't feel as tall anymore. It didn't feel as sharp. "My mom," he said, "she's sick." "Real sick? We got a paper from the hospital. They said we gotta pay her Ray, or they can't help her anymore." His words rushed out now, like a door had opened inside him. "I tried everywhere. People said they couldn't. Or they wouldn't. She told me to come here," she said. "She said you would understand." The billionaire listened. He didn't look away. He didn't check his phone. He didn't glance back at the mansion. He just stood there, holding the drawing, hearing every word. The guards shifted again, uncomfortable, like the ground under their feet wasn't solid anymore. The boy finished speaking and waited. The silence that followed wasn't heavy like before. It was full of something new. Possibility, fear, hope. The billionaire looked at the drawing one more time. Then he looked at the boy. Really looked. At the dusty sneakers. The thin shirt. The eyes that held too much worry for someone so young. He took a step closer to the gate. The metal bars were still there. Still cold, still solid. But now, they felt different. Less like a wall, more like something that could move. The billionaire slid the drawing into his jacket pocket. Careful, like he didn't want to bend it. "What's your name?" he asked. The boy told him. The billionaire nodded, repeating it under his breath, like he was trying to remember something important. He turned to the guard. "Open the gate." The guard hesitated, just for a second. Then he reached for the latch. The sound of the gate unlocking was quiet, but it felt loud in the boy's chest. A click, a shift. The metal moved. The opening wasn't wide, just enough for a small boy to step through. The boy looked at it, then at the billionaire. His heart pounded. He took a step forward, then stopped. "My mom said." He started, then trailed off. The billionaire crouched down, bringing himself to the boy's level. Their eyes met. "Your mom was right," he said. The boy's breath caught the space between them closed. Not just in distance, but in feeling. The power that had filled the air before, sharp and one-sided, it spread out, evened itself, like a table where two people could finally sit across from each other instead of one standing over the other. The boy stepped through the gate. Behind him, the world he knew waited. Ahead of him, the mansion stood. No longer just a symbol of what he didn't have, but a place where something might change. The billionaire stood back up. The drawing warm in his pocket, the boy at his side. He looked toward the house, then back at the gate, like he was seeing it for the first time. Not as a line that kept people out, but as a door he had chosen to open. The guards watched, silent. The boy looked up at the man walking beside him. Still, not sure if this was real, still afraid it might disappear if he blinked. The billionaire walked forward anyway, each step slower than before, more careful. Like Hugh was learning how to move again, in a world he had forgotten how to see. And as they crossed the threshold together, the space they left behind didn't feel empty anymore. It felt changed, like something small and bright had been planted there. Right in the cracks of cold stone and iron, the boy didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if his mom would be okay. He didn't know if this man would keep his word, but he knew one thing. He had been seen, and somewhere deep inside the billionaire, a part of himself he thought he had lost was standing up again, drawn in simple lines and bright colors, reminding him of who he used to be and who he still had a chance to become. The gate opened with a slow, careful sound, like it didn't want to wake the world too fast. Not wide, just enough. The space it made was small, but to the boy, it felt like the sky had cracked open. He stepped forward, 1 foot at a time, heart beating so loud he could hear it in his ears. The cold iron brushed past his shoulder, and for a second he thought it might close again, might change its mind. But it didn't. He was inside. The driveway felt different from this side. The stone was smoother. The air smelled cleaner. The fountain sounded closer, louder, like it was calling his name. He looked around with wide eyes, taking in the tall walls, the shining windows, the trees trimmed into perfect shapes. It all felt like a dream he wasn't sure he was allowed to touch. The billionaire didn't walk ahead of him. He knelt down instead, lowering himself until they were face to face. The suit creased at the knees. The world around them seemed to fade again, like the mansion and the guards and the whole wide sky had leaned back to give them room. The billionaire's eyes were leveled with the boy's now, not looking down, not looking past. Just looking. Tell me, he said. The boy took a breath, then another. The words came out slow at first, like they were afraid to be heard. He talked about the hospital, the white walls, the smell of clean sheets and sharp medicine. He talked about the bills that came in envelopes too thick for hands like his to open without shaking. He talked about the paper taped to their door, the one that said they had to leave, the one his mom tried to hide behind a smile. He talked about nights when his stomach growled so loud he thought it might wake her, and how he would turn on the sink to cover the sound. He talked about how she would push her plate toward him and say she wasn't hungry, and how he would pretend to believe her. He talked about the promise he made, sitting on the edge of her bed, holding her hand and saying he would fix it, somehow, some way. The billionaire listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't look away. His face changed with every word, like each sentence was carving something new into him. His jaw tightened. His eyes softened. His breath slowed. When the boy finished, the silence that followed was gentle, not heavy, not sharp, just quiet, like the pause between waves. The billionaire stood up slowly. It felt like something was pulling on his chest, something deep and old and heavy. Money had never touched that place. Power had never reached it. He turned away for a moment, pressing his lips together, steadying himself. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He made a call. His voice was calm, but there was something under it now, something firm and real. He spoke to someone at a hospital. He spoke to someone about accounts and payments and care. He made another call, this one about housing, about a place that would be warm and safe and close to the clinic. He made a third call, short and quiet, about a job for a woman who would need time and rest and respect. The boy watched, not fully understanding the words, but feeling the change in the air. The mansion didn't feel like a castle anymore. It felt like a place where things were moving, where doors were opening instead of closing. The guards stood back, silent. The fountain kept flowing. The sun moved across the sky. The billionaire ended the last call and looked back at the boy. Your mom will get the care she needs, he said. You won't have to leave your home. And when she's better, if she wants, there will be work here for her. Real work. With real pay. And days off when she needs them. The boy blinked. Once, twice. The words took a moment to settle. Like snow falling on warm ground. You don't have to thank me, the billionaire added quickly, almost like he didn't want the weight of it. Just take care of her. The boy nodded. He tried to speak, but his throat closed up. Instead, he smiled. It wasn't big. It wasn't loud. It was small and shaky and real. But it filled the space between them in a way nothing else could. It filled the driveway, the air, the quiet corners of the mansion that had never heard a sound like it before. The billionaire felt something loosen inside him. Something he didn't know had been tight for a long time. A car was called. B-boy Wes walked to the gate again, this time from the inside. The metal didn't feel cold now. It felt like a line he had crossed and would never have to stand behind again. The billionaire stood there as the boy stepped back onto the road, the world he knew waiting for him. The boy turned around once, lifting a hand in a small wave. The billionaire lifted his own hand without thinking. As the car pulled away, the billionaire reached into his pocket and took out the drawing. The crayon lines were a little smudged now, bent from being carried close to his chest. He looked at the house, the woman in the bed, the tall figure standing beside her. He saw himself there again, not as the man who had walked past a child at a gate, but as the man the boy's mother had believed in. He stood alone in the wide driveway. The mansion rising behind him, the road stretching out in front of him. The space felt different now, softer, warmer, like something human had finally been allowed to live there. The fountain splashed. A bird flew overhead. The world kept moving. He folded the drawing carefully and placed it back in his pocket, right over his heart. He knew there would be meetings tomorrow, calls, deals, numbers on screens. The noise of his life would return. But he also knew something else now. Wealth could build walls. Tall ones. Strong ones. Gates that didn't open unless you had the right name or the right face or the right kind of power. But humanity did something else. Humanity knelt down. Humanity listened. Humanity opened space for a small boy with dusty sneakers and a folded piece of paper to be seen. The billionaire turned back toward the mansion. Not walking as fast as he used to, not gliding across the stone. He walked like a man who felt the ground under his feet again. Inside. The noise waited for him. The busy world, the bright lights, the endless motion. But he carried something new with him now. A quiet, a picture drawn in simple lines. A reminder that the greatest thing he could ever own wasn't written in a bank account or locked behind a gate. It was the choice to see someone standing on the other side. And somewhere down the road, a boy sat in the back of a car, holding on to hope with both hands. The promise he had made to his mother, finally feeling light enough to carry. The mansion stood still behind them both. Tall and silent, no longer just a symbol of distance, but a place where a door had opened. Not because of money, not because of power, but because a child had refused to be invisible, and a man had finally chosen to be human.